Why Russia never went back to planet Venus. What if I told you the only country that ever landed machines on Venus, the most dangerous planet in our solar system, simply stopped going there? Why would a space superpower that conquered a world hot enough to melt lead walk away from its greatest achievement and never return for decades? In the golden age of space exploration, when the Cold War turned science into a battlefield and rockets into symbols of national pride, the Soviet Union achieved something no other nation has matched to this day. It conquered Venus. While the United States planted flags on the moon and sent rovers crawling across Mars, the Soviets sent machines into the most hostile environment in the solar system and, for a few extraordinary moments, made them work. Their Venera probes did what many thought impossible. They landed on Venus, transmitted data, and even sent back images from a world hot enough to melt lead and pressurized enough to crush submarines. And then, almost as suddenly as this era of triumph began, it stopped. For more than 4 decades, Russia, heir to the Soviet space legacy, has not returned to Venus with a major mission. The very nation that pioneered exploration of Earth's evil twin stepped away from the planet it once dominated. The question is both historical and scientific. Why did Russia never go back to Venus? The answer lies in a complex web of engineering difficulty, political collapse, shifting scientific priorities, economic realities, and the changing nature of space exploration itself. During the 1960s and 1970s, the Soviet Union poured enormous effort into planetary exploration. The Venera program, which began in 1961, became one of the most ambitious and technically daring series of missions in the history of spaceflight. After several early failures, Soviet engineers gradually learned how to design spacecraft that could survive Venus's brutal descent. In 1970, Venera 7 became the first spacecraft to land on another planet and transmit data back to Earth. Later missions improved on this achievement. By 1975, Venera 9 and 10 sent back the first images from the surface of another world. These grainy, sepia-toned photographs revealed a rocky, alien landscape beneath a yellow sky, humanity's first glimpse of Venus from the ground. The Venera missions proved that Venus, once thought to be a tropical jungle planet, was in fact a pressure cooker of carbon dioxide with sulfuric acid clouds and surface temperatures around 465 degrees Celsius. The Soviets didn't just visit Venus. They rewrote what scientists knew about it. By the early 1980s, Venus had become a Soviet specialty. The Vega missions in 1985 even deployed balloons into Venus's atmosphere to study its winds. No other nation has since placed instruments both on the surface and in the atmosphere of Venus in such a comprehensive way. Given this dominance, it seemed natural that the next decades would bring even more advanced Soviet and later Russian missions to Venus. But history intervened. One of the main reasons Venus exploration slowed for everyone, not just Russia, is the planet itself. Venus is extraordinarily difficult to explore. Its atmosphere is 90 times denser than Earth's. Its clouds are made of sulfuric acid. Its surface temperature is hot enough to melt lead. Electronics fail in minutes. Metals weaken. Seals rupture. No rover can drive there, no solar panels can last, and no long-term lander can survive without revolutionary technology. Even the best Venera landers lasted barely 2 hours before succumbing to the heat and pressure. Designing spacecraft that can survive for longer requires exotic materials, complex cooling systems, and engineering solutions that are far more demanding than those needed for Mars or the Moon. As space agencies matured and budgets tightened, many concluded that Mars offered more scientific return for less engineering pain. Mars had water history, moderate temperatures, and the tantalizing possibility of past life. Venus, by contrast, was a furnace. This technical reality made Venus missions rare, expensive, and risky, exactly the kind of project that becomes difficult to justify when resources become scarce. The biggest single reason Russia did not return to Venus was not scientific, it was political and economic. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The enormous state-funded system that had supported ambitious planetary exploration fragmented overnight. Funding for science shrank dramatically. Engineers left. Projects were canceled. Institutions struggled to survive. The Soviet space program had been driven by prestige and competition with the United States. The Russian Federation, by contrast, faced economic crisis, inflation, and political instability. Survival came before exploration. Under these conditions, expensive interplanetary missions became luxuries Russia could not afford. Instead, the Russian Space Agency focused on more practical, revenue-generating projects such as launching satellites, cooperating on the International Space Station, and maintaining existing launch infrastructure. Venus, once a symbol of Soviet scientific pride, became a distant memory. At the same time Russia was struggling financially, the global focus of planetary exploration changed. NASA, ESA, and other agencies turned their attention toward Mars, asteroids, and the outer planets. Mars rovers captured the public imagination. Missions to Jupiter and Saturn revealed stunning new worlds. Venus fell out of fashion. This global shift meant fewer opportunities for collaboration, less scientific momentum, and less international interest in sharing the cost of Venus missions. Without strong global interest, Russia had little incentive or support to revive its old Venus expertise. Designing a new Venus lander today would not be a simple revival of old Soviet designs. This means developing entirely new heat-resistant electronics, pressure vessels, and communication systems. The research and development costs are enormous. For a space agency operating on a limited budget, choosing between a Mars mission, a lunar project, or a Venus lander becomes a strategic decision. Mars and the Moon offer clearer political and scientific returns. Venus, though fascinating, is harder to sell. Russia has not forgotten Venus entirely. For more than a decade, scientists have discussed a new mission called Venera D, a modern successor to the Venera probes. This mission would include an orbiter and possibly a lander capable of surviving longer on the surface. But Venera D has been repeatedly delayed. Venus remains one of the most fascinating planets in the solar system. And when Russia finally returns, if Venera D launches as planned, it will be a return not just to a planet, but to a proud chapter of its scientific history. Russia did not return to Venus because Venus is extremely difficult and expensive to explore. The collapse of the Soviet Union drained resources and momentum. Global scientific focus shifted to Mars and the Moon. Budget constraints forced prioritization of nearer-term projects. Geopolitical tensions limited international cooperation. Long-term mission planning like Venera D faced repeated delays. The story is not one of abandonment, but of interruption. Venus waits as hostile and mysterious as ever for Russia to come back. And when it does, it will be returning to the planet it once knew better than anyone else. If you're fascinated by the untold stories of space exploration and the mysteries our planets still hold, subscribe now to uncover more incredible journeys beyond Earth.